Good afternoon. I need a big good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. So, welcome to our celebration of the class of 2018. My name is Ann Bookman, and I'm director of the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy. And I have the great honor of also being graduate program director for the Gender, Leadership, and Public Policy Certificate Program. And we are here to celebrate the 2018 class graduates of that program. So I want to give a very warm welcome to not only all of our students, but their families, spouses, partners, friends, and especially I would say, I think we have a junior GLPP cohort of about six under six. Want to welcome them who are all with us today. We know families, partners, friends, that you are very important, not necessarily a visible, but a very important part of the class succeeding, and we want to thank you for providing your support to them. Before I make a few introductory remarks about the class of 2018, I just want to recognize some special guests who are with us this evening. On stage with me, and you'll hear more about them shortly, I want to welcome Dean Cash and Cheryl Crawford, who is our keynote speaker. A very warm welcome to both of you. Some other VIPs I want to recognize, Kiki Adozi, who could stand, professor and associate dean of the Department of Professor Michael Johnson, chair of the Department of Public Policy and Public Affairs. This is the department that is the academic home of this program. And Tess Brown, an esteemed member of our I also want to recognize in absentia a very special woman named Betty Taymor. She is the founder of this graduate certificate program and founded the program in the late 60s. So we have been around for a long time, and this program actually predates the center. It is because of Betty's vision that we needed a program to train more women for positions of political leadership at all levels of government and more women with policy-making power, that we are here tonight to celebrate a new cohort of public and nonprofit leaders. Finally, I want to welcome and give special thanks to people who make this program the powerful learning and leadership opportunity it is, and that's our faculty and our staff. They are dedicated teachers, wise and compassionate advisors, and they give their all to help our students learn, strive, and succeed. Please stand when I read your name. Professor Emily Hart, not sure she's made it yet, but she's on her way. Professor Krista Kelleher. Professor Elena Stone. Professor Casey Wallach. And Professor Laura Messiah Jefferson. Visiting professor this semester. We're very, very lucky to have her. I also want to recognize and thank Muna Killingback, Assistant Director of the Certificate Program, and Ann Foreman, the Alumni Coordinator. We have an alumni network of over 800 graduates, and we're very proud of all of them. So, members of the class of 2018, it seems like a very short time ago that I was meeting you all for the first time at our orientation program last September. But in fact, it was 9 months ago, and you have traveled miles and miles, academically, professionally, and personally, to reach this moment. At your orientation, I remember vividly how you each spoke about your reasons for choosing UMass Boston, McCormick School, and this particular program. You impressed me and moved me as you spoke about your personal and professional experiences and the policy issues that you want to work on. Your commitment to social justice in many forms was contagious, and I knew from the outset that I would be learning as much, if not more, from you as you would from me. During orientation, I heard one of you bravely stand up and observe that the cohort was very diverse, but the faculty were right, or not. Of course, you were right, right on. And it is that kind of direct input and helpful criticism of the program that is one of the things that has made your class so special. It has been a great pleasure to get to know you, to learn about your dreams and aspirations, and your capacity for effective leadership. I'm so proud of each of you. I'm impressed again as I look at the insert in our program today, and I want to invite our guests to look at that insert as well, because it shows the various sites where our class of 18 students interned and the policy topics that they researched. You'll see that they really have already begun to have a huge impact. They've been working at the State House, in offices of our representatives and senators, in the City of Boston government. They've been contributing to women's organizations, public policy think tanks, nonprofits working for workers' rights, healthcare rights, racial justice, LGBTQ rights, and more. And I know even more now what I only gleaned at orientation, that you are deeply committed to being effective advocates, strong leaders, and dynamic change agents. I think it's important to state that this was not an easy journey for many students. Many of you are balancing rigorous coursework and internships with demanding jobs and families that need care. To say you are juggling, in the common lingo, really is an understatement of what I think you each accomplished. You come from a variety of countries and diverse backgrounds and found a way to support each other and respect your differences. Regardless of what skills you came into the program with, everyone has grown. As a group, you face the kinds of issues that many women face: financial pressures, career pressures, health issues of your own and loved ones, childcare issues, housing issues, and the list goes on. So along with your commitment to social justice and developing as leaders, I commend you for your resilience and your determination to complete the program despite very significant personal odds. I know these struggles were not easy, and I know they will reinforce your commitment to making an impact. To our guests, I can tell you that the class of 2018 is a group of women that are determined to make their voices heard, and some are already talking about running for office, and they will change our world for the better. I also want to give special credit to this class for raising challenging questions about our curriculum and our program delivery. For example, in class discussions, you have raised the importance of probing deeply into the persistence of racial inequality and argued that the women's movement and many other so-called progressive movements must be much more diverse to gain their true power. You have also pointed out that we do not always see clearly the biases of heteronormativity and the way those assumptions surface in our language and in our course readings. As your faculty, we do not always know how to respond immediately, and you know that. But I want you to know that we have been listening intently, and we are always working to make the program stronger. As I said in the beginning, I believe that I have learned, and I think the other faculty feel this true too, more from you than you have from us, and we are all truly grateful for your candor and your wisdom. I want to close by speaking about the particular historical and political moment that you find yourselves in as you are graduating from this program. It is no secret that we have few allies in the White House or in Congress, and I won't name any names. When we are looking at the political landscape, there are critical questions that face each and every one of you. Will women's reproductive rights and access to control of their bodies be protected? There's so much at stake. Will immigrants be allowed to enter this country freely and find suitable employment and housing without fear of deportation? There's so much at stake. Will public schools become places of learning and growth, free from gun violence and the murder of students and teachers? There is so much at stake. Will we continue to see racism, particularly against Black Americans, run rampant in the streets of their communities, in their cars, and even in coffee shops like Starbucks. There is so much at stake. Will we continue to see LGBTQ individuals face discrimination in the military, in employment, in housing? There is so much at stake. Will we continue to see women face harassment in the workplace, violence in their own homes, and assault in public spaces? There is so much at stake. There is hope. I do want to say, there is hope in the growth of the Me Too, this hashtag Me Too movement, and there is hope, I think, in the increasing numbers of women running for office at the local level, the state level, and the national level. But there are so many battles still to be won. So, members of the class of 2018, we are looking to you for your passion, for your principles, your principled stands on so many issues of equity and inclusion. We need your leadership now more than ever. So much is at stake. So now I would like to introduce I see that Professor Emily Hart has joined us. I just want to welcome you and thank you. Now I would like to introduce the Dean of the McCormick Graduate School, David Cash, who is going to be introducing our keynote speaker. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dean Cash. He joined the McCormick School in September 2015 after an impressive career spanning both the public sector and higher education. He served in Massachusetts state government for over a decade, championing environmental policies that will truly address the worldwide challenge of climate change. And boy, do we need his advocacy on those issues. He models a type of leadership that has been taking the words in McCormick's mission and making them a reality out across the United States and internationally. He is a true champion of the certificate program and our center. And we are very lucky to have a dean who understands and supports women's leadership. Please join me in welcoming Dean Cash.
Thank you so much, Anne, for that kind introduction. And I also just want to note how rare it is what you just heard for the leader of an academic program to be standing up here and to be as self-reflective and I don't want to say self-critical, but accepting critique in the way that you've given. That's a very rare attribute, and it's one of the reasons why this program is so dynamic and exciting and as excellent as it is. So thank you, Anne, for your leadership. I also want to, for you to take a moment here, because this is a leadership program, but I think as we all know, we never do leadership solo, and that we always have built our leadership on the foundation of many, many people. And I just want you to take a moment to look around the room at your friends and family and kids and professors and people who have supported you in this last 9-month journey that you've taken. So do that and then give them a huge round of applause. Anne mentioned the remarkable time that we're in right now. And given that it's this time, it's a particular honor that we have Cheryl Crawford here, who I'll tell you a whole lot more about, but I want you to just listen a little about the context. She mentioned the Me Too moment that this is. Really important change to see finally things that seem so obvious to finally come out to the fore. My wife is a therapist, and so she has magazines like Psychotherapy Network are lying around the house. And this one has Men and Me Too. What are they thinking? Really good question, but the title is Silent and Confused. What is there to be confused about? This is like the simplest thing about respect and human rights and treating each other with compassion and how you want to be treated. There seems to be nothing confusing about this whole issue. So I'm going to bring this up with my wife and her group of therapists. But really important time. in that respect. Really important time, again, as Ann mentioned, there are more women candidates throughout the country right now than there ever have been. That is phenomenal. We know what has, again, and yet there is still an unprecedented effort, one that Cheryl is fighting day and day, to roll back access and voting rights. Unprecedented since before the passage of the Voting Rights Act in the 60s, which, by the way, was championed by John W. McCormick, one of the key leaders in the House at the time. He was the majority leader at the time and worked closely first with Kennedy and then with Johnson to get the Voting Rights Act passed. Not since that time has there been the rollback, the blatant rollback that there is throughout the country on decreasing access to people of color, to low-income people. It's just horrendous. And so again, that's part of the context within which Cheryl is working. It's also interesting to think that women did not even have the right to vote less than 100 years ago. That's crazy. I think, by the way, 2020 is going to be a fun time in this program as we celebrate the 100 years of the right of women to vote. But it was also always intersected with race issues as well. Suffrage always was. And there's an interesting quote when we think about the empowerment and what voting can get done, what that power can get done. Ida B. Wells was an African-American journalist at the turn of the century, last century. She had been born into slavery, was a fierce advocate for civil rights, fought the wave of lynching in the South. In fact, I've heard of the new opening of the museum in Montgomery is incredible. I want to put that on the list to visit, and she's noted there quite a bit. But there's a quote of hers where she says, "The alleged menace of universal suffrage, having been avoided by the absolute suppression of the Negro vote, the spirit of mob murder should have been satisfied and the butchery of Negroes should have ceased." If Negroes had the right to vote, then the lynching that had been going on in the South would have eventually come to a close much faster than it had. That's the point, that voting gives power. And so it is very fitting to have Cheryl Crawford here today. She is the executive director of Mass Vote, an organization, a bipartisan organization in Massachusetts that works tirelessly to make sure that people have access and easy access. We were talking right before this event of easy ways to give people the opportunity to vote. And whether that's same-day voting, register and vote at the same time, or free ID cards in states that want to demand ID cards as opposed to very complicated and expensive ways to get ID cards. Many, many different mechanisms that Cheryl and her team have been working on over the last decades on these kinds of issues. Cheryl was born here in Boston and is a familiar face to the activities, both the civil rights activities and her engagement in the NAACP in Boston, but especially around voting rights and all manner of the issues related, whether it's gerrymandering, redistricting, all of those kinds of issues she has been at the forefront of. Prior to that, she had worked in the legislature as a chief of staff. And I don't know if this is true, but the chiefs of staff that I knew when I worked in the legislature, that's like the hardest job. You never can sleep. You're always at the behest of the boss and the boss's constituents and the executive branch and everybody else. It's the true middle person that has to please everybody. It's no surprise that the energy that you have brought to those kinds of jobs you now bring to Mass Vote. And so again, it's hard to imagine a more perfect fit to be talking about the issues that we are facing as a body politic, issues that we are facing as a society, issues that we are facing as graduates of a program that want to go out in the world and be like someone like Cheryl Crawford. Cheryl.
So good afternoon again. There is still so much more to do. Democracy should not be this hard. Congratulations, class of 2018. of the Graduate Certificate Program in Gender Leadership and Public Policy. I am greatly honored and totally humbled to have this opportunity to come before you today to share my views and perspective of the future. I'm especially thankful to Ann Bookman and her team, as I know she has put a lot of energy and thought into making this a successful evening for you. Good evening, Dean Cash, Assistant Deans, Department Heads, distinguished guests, and Class of 2018. Again, I'm Cheryl Clyburn Crawford, the Executive Director of Mass Vote. Mass Vote is a voting rights and issue advocacy organization founded in 2001 by a small group of community leaders to fight for political, racial, and economic equality, with a mission to increase voter turnout and participation, modernize election laws for accountability and transparency and inclusion, and engage the next generation, that would be you, to continue in the legacy of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, ensuring no one is prevented from exercising their right. That is why we, Mass Vote, exist, why I exist, and why you exist to do this work. The work consists of making our society and world a safe and better place to live. Exactly what the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy is committed to do by advancing women's participation in public life and seeking to expand, right, the involvement of women in politics. We need your voices at the table. That is why I'm here today, to assure you that there is room for you. You are exactly who we need at the table in every imaginable and unimaginable way. See, we have to create our spaces sometimes, right? We are living through some very interesting times, as you have already heard, and some challenging times. Given all the new vistas and opportunities that are opening up, I am sure if we should be celebrating, I'm not sure if we should be celebrating, or do we even have time to celebrate? Because oftentimes what happens, we have a win, and we're so busy over here celebrating, something else is going on over here, and by the time we beam in over there, it's already happened. But I say that there's still so much to do, and democracy should not be this hard. Let me take you through a little trip. Just imagine, you can close your eyes if you need to, if it helps you take your mind back. 54 years ago in 1964, we were experiencing so much racial unrest, social tensions gripped our nation. People of all persuasions, goals, and desires were demonstrating and fighting for their civil rights. While the fight for racial equality dominated our social perspectives, the roles of women and the opportunity to choose how you want to be identified was poised to break forward. While the marches on Washington for jobs, freedom, and equality were taking place, we as a nation also marched to understand why were we engaged in wars around the world. The reasons we were marching then, we are still marching for it now. We have not seen that much difference. When I look at the current state of affairs, all of the injustices that are happening around us, gentrification across the country, cradle to prison pipeline, police brutality, homelessness, joblessness, equality, equity, equal pay for equal work, right? Access to the decision makers in search for privacy. Those are just to name a few of the issues that are currently running and have been running for a long time now. These remain unchanged. To those of us who are around, which doesn't include most of you, the situation in 2018 looks a little different than it did in 1964, but not very much. We have made some advances towards our goals of equality, thanks to the sacrifice and courageous leaders who have come before us and whose shoulders we stand on. Nationally, as well as locally, we must still press forward as the demands of truth and justice remain unanswered. Right now, we have new and emerging campaigns, you've heard a couple of them, that have sprouted and are evolving. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, No More. We have youth rising up and demanding to be heard, fighting for their life and pushing for controls around guns. We are talking about minimum wage, equal pay, paid family leave, respect for gender identity, the issues continue. The conversations that remain on the floor regarding the diversity, gender equality, racial equality, economic equality, that is why we need your voices into this conversation. We need you to stay there until we can have some real and permanent changes. We keep having these wins, then we have these setbacks. We need people to stay engaged until we get the job done. One thing that remains unquestionable is our ideas of democracy are not all the same. As women and leaders, we are inclusive versus exclusive. That is our strength. We bring people together quicker. That's why you need to be at the table. Democracy should not be this hard. There is still so much more to do. That brings me to ask you why. Why are you willing to join this fight? Up to now, the end was not clear in sight as the incline was getting steeper. Even with clear perspectives and new visions, the challenge for progressive growth and change remains formidable. It is critical you figure out your whys. It's going to get tough. It's always been tough. It may take you some time to really sit down with yourself and analyze your why. And it might even change as you accomplish your goals throughout your journey. Your why can be your plan to run for office. I heard someone may be running for office one day or be the head of a large foundation. Just remember to think about why you are and why you want to engage in any form of social justice, any social justice institutions, and work in the nonprofit sector. You need to think about why you're willing to do it, because you already heard that it's underpaid, right? You already heard that it's overworked, you're underpaid. But when you think about your why, what makes you tick every day, what makes you get up every day and keep fighting this fight, you may even think about filling a position at NASPO as the manager of the Women for Color Pipeline for Change. And if you are, call me later. But on a serious note, why are you willing to engage and get involved? One thing is for sure, you need this clear understanding. Because when the challenges and the adversity come at you, and they will hit hard and consistently, right? Whenever you're making change, you can best believe that it's going to keep coming at you. Surely you'll face these challenges, but how do you face them will really determine your character. As a leader, you must develop an invincible spirit that can withstand any possible form of adversity. You see, the path to greatness is never smooth or easy. Adversity is the touchstone of truth, but perseverance marks your place in her story. Okay? It is here I am obligated to let you know that after you figure it all out, after you give it everything that you've got, and it doesn't work, or you decided through this arduous journey that you really love something else, it is okay to change your mind, recalibrate, and change your direction. But you must always remain sincere and true to yourself. The decision you make now is not necessarily a lifetime decision. See, one of the things that we find is that people, when they're graduating, you're getting all of these questions, what you're going to do, what's next, and people are asking you to make these decisions. Some of you have already made decisions, others are still trying to figure it out. It's okay to make that decision now. Give it everything that you've got, do the very best that you can. But if you change your mind, I've had like 4 careers. And I can tell you, I feel like I've been good at every last one of them. Okay? Because what you need to do is to commit to learn whatever lesson there is to glean from each experience before you move on. It's okay. Some people find a career and stay there. They stay there until they retire. Great. There are others that make different decisions and take different directions along the way. That's great too. Whatever path you take, just be true to yourself. Really figure out, what is it that I want to do? Why am I doing it? It makes those days when things are coming at you and it's really, really hard, it still makes you brush it off and keep moving. And that's what you want to be able to do, no matter what. See, you get to decide what story your life will tell. Just remember, only you can write the ending to the saga of your existence. As I said, I've had 4 careers in my life. I've been really good at, done well at all of them. Each time I dared to dream. And because my present training and experience succeeded in my efforts to advance and achieve, each path has led to another path and greater challenges that I accept. But nonetheless, all of these experiences and interactions have made me who I am today. And I like who I am today. You will like who you are too, if you do as Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. I encourage you to dream. I encourage you to dream big, dream bold, push beyond the artificial barriers that once harnessed our dreams and potential as women. Can there ever be a more wonderful story than your own? One that will be recounted by future generations that will marvel at your dreams and your accomplishments. And so I ask, whose shoulders are you standing? My father was the first community activist, community organizer that I ever knew. He used to organize the neighborhood youth through a program called Summer Thing. I don't know if anybody can remember Summer Thing. He used to run the one in Dorchester. And if it wasn't Summer Thing, it was the church. If it wasn't the church, it was the neighborhood in general. He had to do something with his 10 children. There's 10 of us. Okay, that's a story for another day. But he, along with the strength of my mother holding down the home front, helped shape many of my perspectives. One of my earliest memories as a young girl is standing with a group of people who I didn't know, holding hands and singing, "We Shall Overcome." At that time, I didn't know what justice and equality was, nor did I know how to achieve it, but I knew something was not right. And the lesson I received from my parents was to do something about it. The deep sadness that surrounded me then led me to a bright sunshine of hope as I became aware of my talent, my strength, and my power to do something about changing for the better those negative challenges and making positive differences, not just in my life, but in the lives of others around me. The seed for activism was planted in me very early. One could not say that I came from a traditional political family, but my mother, father, aunts, uncles, and cousins were aware of the world around them and never became satisfied with the status quo. Through their involvement and insistence that I always participate, the seed for growth and change was planted and bloomed in me. While it took some time, the idea of justice lived in me until I found my voice for it. I just had to find my why. It's decision time. Life will give you whatever you're willing to fight for. Mahatma Gandhi taught people to live with lion-like courage, impressing upon them that they cannot afford to leave things up to others. He taught that we have to stand up for ourselves and fight for justice. Mahatma said, ultimately, the only way forward is by developing self-reliance and forging a standalone spirit. A woman with knowledge, skill, and ability like each of you, and with a clear view to the future, Shirley Chisholm once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. The certificate you receive and strength of the knowledge you have gained clearly gives you a folding chair, if not your own table. And as once a good friend said, courage will not skip this generation. So congratulations to the class of 2018. Go forth and do amazing things. And I'll see you at the top.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was fantastic, inspiring, really set our graduates on a terrific course, asking their why and listening to Shirley Chisholm. Fantastic. Thank you. So now we come to the part of the program where your faculty, not me, but the other faculty, want to speak to you. And I just want to say before I call them each up individually, again, what an amazing faculty group they are. I learned so much from each of them. I look forward to our faculty meetings, from hearing about how things are going in the courses, from how you inspire them and challenge them, and we all brainstorm together to try to figure out the answers. So it's a great pleasure to introduce them each individually, and I'm going to start with Professor Emily Hart.
Hello, graduates, and everyone here tonight. It's great to see all of you again. For those of you who don't know me, as Anne mentioned, my name is Emily Hart, and I taught Women in U.S. Politics and Policymaking last fall. The reason I love teaching is that I learn so much from and repeatedly inspired by my students, and this has never been more true for me than it was this past year with you all. As individuals, you brought a range of brilliant strengths to the class: intelligence, courage, determination, persistence, openness, compassion, and honesty. You engaged very deeply with the subject matter and also the classroom experience. I really appreciated the many, many ways that you shared your own ideas and experiences, often very personally and courageously, and in the process you challenged me and one another to grow and to stretch. Together, you have the invaluable strength of being able to see the world otherwise. And as individuals, you embody this in many different ways. But overall, as a group, you're willing to question the status quo, you're able to envision the world otherwise, a better future for yourselves and others, and you're committed to figuring out how to move things forward. And this is a kind of leadership that I think is very needed in our world right now, as we've heard from the other speakers this evening. But approaching life this way doesn't always feel easy. There's often a big gap between where we are personally or as a society and where we would like things to be. A quote attributed to Nelson Mandela comes to mind when I think of this cohort. It always seems impossible until it's done. And I think that that's very true. Things look impossible right up until something totally changes. And even though the way won't always be clear, keep going. Stay true to your values and vision and find ways to stick together while you do it. And most importantly, don't doubt that your leadership matters, even when it looks impossible. So thank you all for a great semester, and many congratulations.
Thank you, Emily. I'd like to call up next Krista Kelleher.
It's an honor to be celebrating with all of you tonight. I'd first like to recognize the motivations and intentions that brought you to this program and your many accomplishments this past year. I find my own intentions to effect positive change for women and indeed for all people renewed by your convictions, your commitment, and your efforts. As a cohort, you encouraged a commitment to intentionality, and for that I am grateful. I'd like to take a moment now to reflect on what each of you has individually taught me this past year. Pamela, I know you're not here, and we miss you, but you've taught me to draw upon our wisdom. Leslie, to abide by our principles. Cindy, to make government work for all people. Shirley, to be persistent and resilient. Ashley, to recognize our purpose. Emily, to see the connection between public policy and how we care for people. Chelsea, to build bridges between what we are doing and what we hope to do. Abby, to manage using our minds and our hearts. Michelle, to follow our passions. Jessica, to be an effective advocate. Brooke, to give voice to those who are marginalized. Colleen, to understand justice at a deeper level. Samantha, to maintain balance among our many roles and responsibilities. Mary to be candid and honest, and also funny. Misha to be determined. Erica to be driven by unwavering values. Megan to keep equality at the center. Tara to be strategic. Ramona to be intentional. You have all taught me so much over the past year, and for that I'm really grateful. Your voices, talents, and contributions are sorely needed at this time, and you've heard that a number of times tonight. I look forward to being there for you as your career develops, and that's definitely over the summer and in years to come. And I look forward to the new roles and new challenges you'll take on, and I'm proud of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista, very much. Now I'd like to call up Elena Stone. Krista and Elena actually co-teach together. So Elena.
Thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. I always love these graduations, and each year I love standing and looking out at the faces in the cohort, and I always feel so proud to be teaching in this program and really grateful to be in a position to get to know some of you really well, to get to know all of you on some level, and to help facilitate the internships that make so much growth and development and learning possible, and to see all the amazing things that you're able to do in those positions, the things that you're able to accomplish. And especially with all of that, to have the opportunity to learn so much from all of you as individuals and as a group. So this year, in response to some questions that Muna sent out, I sat and meditated a little bit on the strengths of this group and what I've learned from you. And what arose for me was an image and a phrase, defiant flowers of resilience, toughness, and hope. I think this image and these qualities arose not just in the context of our program, but as other speakers have evoked, in the context of this historical moment that we're all in, the change and the chaos that seems to swirl around us so relentlessly, the shedding of the social safety net, the inaction on mass shootings and police brutality, the attacks on women's reproductive rights, the permission that seems to have been given at the highest levels of our government for racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. So many other things, and each of us is impacted in different ways and at different levels by these changes. Yet, all of you are here having made the choice to act and keep acting to build a better world and to rise up like defiant flowers from the cracked sidewalks or drought-parched soils, determined to fulfill your own true beauty and life force, and to transform not only yourselves but the world around you, and to keep making the decision to do that day after day. So what I've learned from you all is really the many individual ways of doing that. The infinite ways that women can be tough and resilient and keep making those decisions every day, to keep going, to offer hope, to offer transformation, to offer the best that they have, that you have, because ultimately we love the world and we turn toward it like a defiant flower turns toward the sun and keeps turning. And there are an infinite number of ways to do that. And the one that you, each one of you, the one that you have to offer is absolutely necessary to this historical moment, absolutely necessary to this world, absolutely necessary to being able to nurture hope
and nurture freedom and nurture justice and dignity and human rights, and to get us through to the other side of these very troubled and troubling times into a more beautiful and inclusive future. So whether you work in the State House or run for office, whether you craft the messages or help children and families who are struggling, or fight for racial justice, or become a socially conscious entrepreneur, or work in the arts to make them more inclusive, or lend the wisdom that you've gained after a long career, whatever it is that you have to give, whatever is uniquely yours, whatever blossoms forth within you, that defiant and resilient beauty, that is what's needed. So don't let anyone else define you. Never think that what you have to give isn't enough. And fully embrace and nurture the defiant flower that you are and the beauty that you have inside you. And know that that is exactly what these times need. And that all you need to do is let that happen and set it free. So way back in the second wave feminist movement, I had a poster on my wall that I kind of carried with me from place to place wherever I live. And the slogan was, "We are the women that we've been waiting for." So this is my final word to you, that you are the women that you and we have been waiting for. And we all can't wait to see what you do next. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Elena. Now I'd like to call Tracy Waller. Hi, everyone. Congratulations. This is the closest you'll get to a prepared lecture. The GLPP program is special in that it brings together a group of women who might otherwise never have met or possibly ever even wanted to meet. You shared an interest in creating social and political change, but that was all you had in common. You come from different racial, ethnic, educational, political, and class backgrounds. You represent different generations, have different work, life, and political experiences and goals. So many differences can stir up anxiety and conflict, and are also a rich source of knowledge. My only regret was that during our time together, we could not fully harness the richness of all you have to offer to each other. But just because you're graduating doesn't mean it all ends here. As you go out to face the adaptive challenges in this world and the increasing anxiety that goes along with it, remember that leadership doesn't exist in a vacuum. And sometimes even groups comprised of the most intelligent, well-meaning, and competent people can behave as if they are stupid, incompetent, and mean-spirited. You need only turn on the news for evidence of that. The old adage says that the group is greater than the sum of its parts. While that is often true, the opposite can also be true. You have worked really hard this year. Between full-time course loads and internships, many of you also worked full-time or part-time jobs, some while also taking care of families. And you did this at a time of greatly increased stress in our larger environment, when basic civil and human rights are once again being challenged and attacked. There's much work to be done. The change work you are engaged in or will engage in will challenge you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Remember, you can't do it alone, and you don't have to. You are all now part of a larger, broader network of women
who have graduated from the program. Over 800, I heard. I hope that you take advantage of that and call upon each other and those in the larger network for advice, consultation, mentorship, and support as you move forward to take on new professional, leadership, and political roles. I hope you also stay in touch with us, with me. It's an invitation on the faculty, and let us know how you're doing and what you're up to. Congratulations, it's been a real pleasure to work with all of you.
Thank you, Tracy, very much. Now I'd like to call up Lori Messiah Jefferson.
Good evening. Awe, respect, and power are the words that come to mind when I think of you. I came to UMass just a few months ago, not knowing what to expect. But then I met you, and I knew that my teaching would never, ever be the same. I vowed you would get more because you deserved it. Plain and simple. You brought your authentic passions into the classroom and to your work. There was a persistence in your inquiry and zest, even given all your responsibilities, challenges, and anxieties. Pushing and pushing through, no holds barred. What happens when extraordinary women get together? They create, they debate, they learn, they explore, they strategize, they inquire, they make plans, and they find their way. They discuss thorny topics and difficult dilemmas. They express their frustrations, and believe it or not, sometimes they don't even know what to say. They welcome strangers, and they share their wisdom. You did all of that and more in our class. We focused on the policy problems that disproportionately impact women's well-being. We explored new theories to make sense of the origins of these challenges and tried on approaches to solving intractable, persistent trials that women face. We very seriously talked about how the intersections of a person's race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, and other identities and institutional structures create social challenges that require multifaceted and tiered strategies. I not only brought my scholarly lens to the classroom, but who I am as a Black woman, with my experiences seared in my mind, in my being, and in my psyche. I wanted to push you to challenge and or clarify your understanding of social issues and bring forth the excellence in you. You succeeded, and really, really well. I'm reading those papers. My hope and my wish is that we all can possess the boldness of voice and the communication of Bell Hooks, Maya Angelou, Rita Dove, Audre Lorde, Alison Rebecca Walker, and the tenacity and feistiness of Jane Fonda and Hillary Clinton, the heart and strategy of Marta Attell, CEO of Nike, and the heart and moral compass of Mother Teresa. I know that's a tall order, right? So why do we do the work that we do? Think of this: inequitable discipline by race, gender, and disability in school, sexual harassment and violence in the workplace and other venues, police violence against women and people of color, lack of quality daycare, particularly for lower income families, getting women and women of color in elected office, and much, much more. You will influence these issues we discussed. You will also influence these issues in the halls of Congress and community-based organizations, in the academy, and think tanks, and in the State House, and even in your homes. I'm sure some of you have made some ruckus in your homes. Is that correct? That's what I thought. Yes, as evidenced above, women carry an extra burden. Yes, I often cry, and I become frustrated, and I clench my fists given all that we as women face. But then I rejoice when I think of you. Because if we have you in the world tackling what seems to be intractable inequities, I know that that little girl sitting uncomfortably in the corner
will rise up and she will be bold because of the policies that you will advocate, you will create, and you will demand accountability for. You will forge a change in the state, the country, and even in the world. Use what God has given you, your intellect, your skills, and what we often don't talk about, your intuition. Intuition, as Susan Taylor, the former editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine, a black woman's publication, said, intuition is a higher form of mind than rational thinking. It is the synthesis of the heart, the mind, and the soul, working to expand awareness and understanding. It coaches us to be fair and to do the right thing. It helps us to stretch us and take risks, to keep loving and keep giving birth to our new selves. Trusting our inner voice is a particular struggle for women. Society has inculcated in us the belief that our feelings are marginalized and not important. Part of our work is to honor ourselves and correct the historic devaluation of womanhood and define ourselves in terms of what it means to be a citizen of the world. The recognition and affirmation of our intrinsic beauty, richness, and grace are a particular necessity as a woman. My mother, who passed away 4 years ago, would be 94 tomorrow. She was my first example of a woman who lived in her own right. With civil rights, she was a civil rights and a women's rights advocate who was bold with a social conscience that pulled her toward being a disruptor in places where she saw things that no one should ever accept. As women, especially in these times, we must find safety and sanctuary inside ourselves before we can step gently or boldly into the change we want to see. As a mother, as my mother did, draw from what makes you who you are, be authentic, be fearless, be dogged in your methods, strategies, and never be ashamed of who you are. What you think of yourself is how people will perceive you. But remember, in all your business and boldness, taking care of yourself is also a revolutionary act. Be dogged about taking care of yourself as well. Families and friends, keep loving, encouraging, and dreaming for those that we honor today. They need the relationships and support of others. We don't do hard work alone without consequence. That's very important to know. Thank you so much for being the extraordinary women that you are.
Thank you, Lori, and I would just like to have us all give a round of applause to all of our faculty who I Okay, so now we come to the part of the program that everybody's been waiting for. We get those certificates. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. I'd like to invite Muna Killing back, Assistant Director of the program, and Ann Foreman, our Alumni Coordinator, to come and join me on stage. And Muna is going to be reading each of your names in alphabetical order. And then I'd like to ask the faculty to gather on the far side of the stage there, in any order you want. So what's going to happen is Muna will read your name. I will give you your interim certificate, we'll call it. And then you can pass down the faculty line to receive congratulations. So let's start the process.
Okay, let's start. Leslie Agyamfra, would you like to come up? Chelsea Clark. Samantha Coleman. Megan Condry. Shirley Edokpa. Colleen Fonseca. Tara Correa. Ashley Lata. Emily Lazaro. Erica Mace. Mary Molazic. Brooke Murphy. Cindy Nguyen. Ramona Ostrowski. Last but not least, Jessica Sanic.
I just want to, first of all, congratulate our graduates. I think another round of applause is always I just also want to mention the names of 4 students who we are so sorry could not be with us, and they each had last-minute problems, but I just want to say their names out loud and give them a round of applause. So, Abigail Durland, Michelle Fahey, Pamela Love, and Nisha Suarez. We congratulate you. Okay, so now I would like to ask Muna Killingback to come to the front to say a few words of her own to our graduates. And I think I want to also just take this opportunity to thank Muna so much for everything she does day in and day out. I could not possibly be the program director of this program without everything that Muna does. I really feel she's the heart and soul and the glue of this program, keeping everything together from the most mundane, getting parking spaces for people when they need them the most, to doing very important academic advising and support of all our students. So my deep appreciation to Muna.
Oh, thank you for your kind words, Anne, and congratulations to you all. I'm super proud of all of you, and I remember you all from the early days, so it's been a fun journey. So before I introduce the class speakers, I just wanted to share a few brief thoughts with you on this auspicious day as you cross the bridge from your life as you know it now with homework and papers to a different life, but some of you will be continuing with papers. all of that. So congratulations to those people. So we heave a big sigh of relief together. The year is over. We're moving forward. It's been quite a year, and over the course of the year, I know that we've grown a lot together, and we've also had some angst. As we've had to navigate the complex bureaucracy of UMass Boston sometimes, registration, and as Ann mentioned, parking spaces, which I will never forget. Our situation with the parking person over at 1 Beacon Street. So and had many conversations with him. So we became good friends over the course of the year. Stan and I. So anyway, so it's been a year of change at UMass Boston, even upheaval, and we've had to navigate a lot of transitions as well. So, but now we're ready to close this particular chapter, and hopefully you can turn your attention now to all the burning issues that are calling to you and to all of us. We are always doing work at multiple levels, but we sometimes have to ultimately prioritize the most pressing needs of those who are suffering the most amongst us. And I say this because people are dying. There are actually people dying from reasons of man-made causes that are easily preventable and avoidable. Whether it's people here in this country who are killed or assaulted or imprisoned for doing whatever just because they are Black or Latinx or Muslim, or oppressed people in other parts of the world who may be sometimes shot for peacefully protesting to gain human rights that they are denied, simply because they are not part of the dominant, powerful group. So we need to lift up these most dire situations, and I would appeal to you to do so as you go forward. And this is because whenever people are dying, there is always a trickle-down, trickle-up effect of injustice that is fueled by fear and indifference, that begins to consume us in ways that are maybe not immediately seen, but are always felt. As Dr. Martin Luther King famously said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So I want to urge you today not to be coy or shy about the gifts that each of you possess. And we know here in the GLPP program, as we've come to know you, we know that each of you have multiple gifts and talents in abundance. And I want to repeat that, so you take that home with you. Each of you have gifts and talents in abundance. This is not the time for modesty, my friends. We need each of you to be fully deployed. So I would like to leave you these words of Marianne Williamson, this quote is often attributed to Nelson Mandela as well. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So thank you for being the wonderful women you all are. Thank you for the privilege of working with you over this year. And please keep in touch with us as you continue your extraordinary lives and go out and change the world. So, and right now I'd like to take a moment to thank our GLPP team, Denise Murrow and Cindy, Carolina Perez, who did the slideshow for us and is helping with the tech. So Cindy, can you stand up? Cindy, Carolina Perez. Along here. Communications intern. Tamerly Rock. Tamerly, are you around? There's Tamerly. You're working with me all year. And Cindy, Carolina, Tamerly, and Denise Moreau. Denise, where are you? Where's Denise? Oh, there she is. Denise. Okay. Denise was our internship coordinator because this was first year of our Cummings Foundation paid internship. So it was an exciting year for us. I'd also like to thank our graduation staff and volunteers, Sadia, Dola, Darlene, and Rosa. And finally, I'd like to thank our 4 class representatives who were elected by the class to represent them, of course. And I'd like to ask you, each four of you, to stand up when I call your names. Jessica Sannon. You can stay standing too, okay, because we can all applaud you at the end. Colleen Fonseca. And Chelsea Clark. All of us at the program very much appreciate your service to the class this year, and we were grateful for all your helpful suggestions and ideas along the way. So now I'd like to introduce our very first class speaker. These speakers were also elected by the class, and the first one is Chelsea Clark. So Chelsea, can you come to the podium?
First of all, I just want to thank you all for being here, leaders and members of the UMass community, GLPP staff and faculty, our wonderful keynote speaker, and all of our family and friends who made it out today. So, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Is an excerpt from Robert Frost, a poem of his that's often used at graduations, which I think is a little ridiculous. Now, this isn't going to be a commentary on the poem. This is a policy program after all, and we also have a Master of Studies in Creative Writing here who has a specialty in poetry, one of my best friends. So it would be risky for me to do an exegesis on the poem. But what I do want to point out, without going into the content of this poem turned graduation quote, I also want to pause and say how grateful I am that none of the previous speakers used it. I was sitting there, I was like, what happens if so that didn't happen. Is that what made it popular isn't what the author intended. And I do have some APA formatted citations ready in case any of my professors want to see them after. We can discuss them over cake at the reception. But before stating that one of the paths made all the difference, the narrator of the poem has stated multiple times that the paths are essentially the same. So again, this isn't about the poem's content. I'm not going to make an argument either for the virtue of taking a unique path, which is what made the poem so popular, nor will I make the counter-argument about the poet's original intent, which is more likely about finding meaning and purpose in arbitrary decisions. The point is that one overly simplified narrative is the one that we are familiar with. Does that sound familiar? And the point is that this program has taught us to always question not just what we think we know, but to ask who is creating the knowledge. And how do the various intersections of those in power influence their position on a policy issue, on any stance that they're taking. And then vitally, how do we take our own myriad intersecting identities of our own and analyze how those influence our positions? On the policy we advocate, on our own research one day, and even in our relationships with each other. And those we'll work with in the future, and those will lead in the future. So I think our mandate now is to question the popular narrative, to question systems of power and the status quo, and to dig into policy, to ask the equivalent of what was the author's intent, and what does it mean if something does take on a life of its own other than the author intended. Maybe that's not bad. There's a discussion there. And I think we've wrestled with some of these questions together over the past year. One of the best parts of starting out at orientation, actually Anne mentioned, was for me also, hearing about all the things that you had already accomplished and the things that you aspired to learn this year. And for me, one of the best parts of graduating right now is the prospect of seeing what we all do next. So whatever road we take, whether it's less traveled or actually arbitrary, may we all check our privilege on the axes where we hold it. May we stay reflexive and reflective, as adaptive leaders, and may we support each other in word and deed, and on campaign trails when we run for office.
And now I'd like to invite Colleen Fonseca up to the podium.
So in true millennial fashion, I have my notes on my cell phone, so bear with me. So hello everyone, my name is Colleen Fonseca, and if all goes well, the next few weeks I will have a graduate certificate in the Gender Leadership in Public Policy program. So as I was thinking about what I would talk about today, how to reflect on the time that we've spent together over the last few months, I was brought back to a presentation that one of our classmates had made. And as part of our internship class, we were asked to do presentations to the class to talk about our internships. And we were asked, one of the questions on the criteria was we had to talk about what were our expectations of our internships and what were the actual outcomes, what actually ended up happening. And one of our fellow classmates and a friend of mine, Leslie, had a slide and it said her expectations for her internship was that she was going to be frustrated. And the outcome of her internship experience was that she was frustrated. And I thought to myself, this might actually be the perfect representation of the last year and being in school. You see, frustration is a very powerful emotion, and it's one that we don't talk about a lot in the organizing and political world. And it's really frustration that made me find this program in the first place. Prior to the current role that I have now at the Sheriff's Department, I was working in Rhode Island with victims of sex trafficking. And I was frustrated every single day, going into the courtroom and seeing young girls and women as young as 14, coming back after we found them, searching for them for months, to sit in front of a judge and for the judge to look at them and say, right now the thing that she needs is to sit inside a juvenile justice facility and serve her sentence. A young girl that I helped find, that I called every single hospital in the area looking for her, 14 years old and pregnant by a John she didn't even know. When we found her, the judge looked her in the eyes and said, "You are going to the Rhode Island Training School," which is the juvenile justice facility in Rhode Island. And it was this frustration that made me apply and fill out the application. And when I got to the program, I realized that frustration had led a lot of us to this program. A lot of us were frustrated. We were frustrated with the current political system, with the status quo. We were frustrated with STEAM education access to minority communities. We were very frustrated about access to elementary school. We were very frustrated about higher education, police brutality. We were frustrated about a lot. I know I was. And that didn't change when we got to the classroom. We brought that frustration into class and we talked about it. And there were days in class when I was leaving even more frustrated than I thought I could handle. And it's with this mounting amount of frustration that I know that the class in front of me is going to do meaningful and impactful work. I know that you are all eager and impatient to make the change that we all enrolled in this program to do. But I do have some words of caution. In all of your quests to reach for the stars and fight for the communities that you care for, and you're reaching upwards, I urge you to keep one hand firmly rooted on the earth, to be anchored in the communities that might not have access to shoot for the stars in the same ways that we do, and that we have access to do. Mainstream feminism has made a lot of mistakes. And if you haven't learned that thus far in the GLPP program, there might still be time to apply for it next year. Sorry, I'm like a little sick. So mainstream feminism has obviously made a lot of mistakes. And I really urge for you all to think and consider in your quest to shattered glass ceilings, right, which is a problematic phrase for me to say, is where are you on the road to that glass ceiling? And whose shoulders are you standing on? Who are you frustrating by being on top of, okay? And I really want for you to take all the lessons that we learned in this class about intersectionality and how that affects policy. I want you to bring all of that frustration and that anger into every building, every institution, every organization that you go forth and work in. And I know that you will do it. I know that you can. I've seen you all grow in this process, and I'm so proud of the accomplishments and the knowledge that you've all cultivated in your time here. And so, with that in mind, I'm really hopeful that you will all give him hell across the city of Boston, across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and across this country, because I know you can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chelsea and Colleen, for your inspiring and powerful remarks. So, and now, by the way, Chelsea, that happened to me, that I read a quote, and then one of the class speakers, a few minutes later, read the same quote. So anyway, attributing it to a different person, too, so make it more complicated. That was the Marianne Williamson quote that's often attributed to Nelson Mandela. So now I'd like to invite up Tara Garea to speak to us.
To my shadow. This is Noor Hakim, my shadow. Wow, how do I follow these amazingly beautiful, awesome, kick-ass women? I have absolutely no idea. And I also understand that I am the only thing standing between you and Kate. So I'm going to keep my comments really short, but most importantly, I am really just simply grateful. I've been thinking and reflecting a lot about what I could share, what could I say, and all these words of like, you know, mulling in my head from like Bell Hooks to Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality, what is my position, what is the social occasion, the privilege that I have, and the shoulders that I stand on. And it's also the 6th day of Ramadan, and I want to acknowledge my husband, who's actually probably the only one fasting in here. And also the person who encouraged me to apply. As I collect myself, I think what I really wanted to share tonight was this notion of gratitude. And leave on those words. A lot has happened the past 9 months. To many of us, personally, professionally, in our spiritual journeys, our individual journeys, and it hasn't been easy. I mean, as a cohort, even, we've experienced a lot. And I'm very proud to have gotten to know all of you, some of you more than some of you a lot more, and some I have not had the opportunity to really get to know. I'm hoping that this is not the end, but a beginning, to get to know not only our faculty, but our cohort colleagues. And I just wanted to really keep my comments really brief, but also what I've been really reflecting about is how grateful I am to the UMass Boston system, the faculty, Michael On, who's actually with the MPP program, and I really want to credit him and actually my husband for convincing me to join the UMass Boston family. And they are the ones who also turned me onto the GLPP program. And I've had the privilege then to get to know Anne and everybody and the amazing, amazing faculty and each and every one of you. I'm a little bit emotional in that, it is the 6th day of Ramadan, so it's a time of spiritual reflection of who we are, what is our meaning here on our planet, what can we give back to humanity, and it really is a very introspective time for us as Muslims. And it comes as a perfect time as this program concludes, and I've been thinking a lot about that, and all I can really think about is how grateful we are to what we do have and that our privilege that we have, and the shoulders that I stand on. So I pay homage tonight actually to my grandparents, my maternal and paternal grandmothers, who were part of the forced migration from India to Pakistan because of their religious differences. Everybody's been asking me tonight, oh, you have a lovely outfit and you're matching with your daughters, because I really want to teach them to be really strong women. And as Cheryl shared with us her comments about we stand on shoulders, we need to question constantly the why. Why do we do what we do? And that's what's been really on my mind, and trying to be really grateful for who we are, the opportunities before us. And I think of my mother, who had to forgo her entire education just to raise the 5 of us as immigrant Pakistani Muslim women here in America, who moved here about 46 years ago. And so I stand on those shoulders. I stand on my maternal and paternal grandmothers who basically, barely survived their lives and gave up everything on the Indian side just to make it to the Pakistani side because they happened to be Muslim. So I'm just, I think, really overwhelmed with all of those emotions. And I think of, when I look at our cohort and a lot of the struggles that they've had to endure, the resilient women, and yes, they tend to sort of take over the space right now. So this is Noor and Sophia. So these are my whys at some level. This is why I do what I do, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I've had here, which is going to help me to continue my educational journey. And I just believe with one phrase. I was about 5 years old and my mom taught me this prayer in Arabic. And it's Rabbi Zidni Ilma, which really means, my Lord,